people often mistake what you love or your passion as your purpose, but it's an element of it, right? Your purpose is so much more than the things that you love, but it's important to detail those things out and to be as open and as creative as you can when you're listing out those things that you love. And to be honest also in the things that you've overcome.
If you're finding value in what you're watching, consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the bell notification. Oh, and don't forget to drop a comment. I love hearing your thoughts and ideas. By the way, we have got a ton of other videos waiting for you. And if you are ready to level up your mindset, come hang out with us in our private Facebook group called Mindset for Business Success. Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us, he drives positive change through strategic coaching and consulting. Passionate mentor for trailblazers. He's a noted speaker worldwide, a proud Latino, and a Be Act Change co-founder. Paul ignites growth and alignment globally. Welcome to our show, Paul.
Thank you so much. That guy sounds awesome. Let's talk to Paul.
Oh, I don't know. That's why you're here, my friend. Looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No worries, no worries. So your background involves navigating a lot of complex, high-threat international environments. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Can you elaborate on high-threat international environments, what they are and what they entail, please, and then we'll continue.
Sure. Yeah. So I have part of my background is in international diplomacy and international economics and that sort of thing. I'm a former diplomat and I've worked and served overseas in many different countries, but it's working in places, for example, like Haiti, like Pakistan, like different places in sub-Saharan Africa and that sort of thing, where high threat literally means that there are security concerns, that there's a good amount of political instability, social instability, economic instability, places where as a business person, especially if you're coming from a sort of US Western sort of concept, the idea is that you have a propitious, enabling environment that allows business to take place and allows it to flourish because you have an understanding that there's a certain amount of physical safety, there's a certain amount of legal safety that's there to back you up in case things go wrong. And not the whole world is not that way. So my background is in working in places that are still working to put together some of those foundational things, which makes things from a business point of view, from a humanitarian point of view, much more risky.
So how has that experience shaped your approach to leadership and how it creates your system around making those purpose-driven decisions?
That's a great question, actually. I would say two major things. One is that a really profound realization that people are the same. People are the same. People have a foundation inside them. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a reason for being on this earth, and that everyone is doing the best that they can with the resources at their disposal to live out that purpose. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because I think it's really tempting sometimes for us to say, oh, living my purpose it's a very first world thing. It's an American thing. It's a white thing. It's whatever it is. And it's really important to realize that everyone has that purpose. Everyone that I have met, and I've had the pleasure, the honor, the privilege of working with fishermen, with cattle farmers, with mechanics, with construction workers, all the way up to CEOs, ministers of justice, and Supreme Court justices, and things like that. And everyone that you talk to, when you ask them what's their highest aspiration, or why do you think that you were put on this earth, everyone has an answer to it. So that's a really important thing. It doesn't matter if you're in Afghanistan, if you're in Zimbabwe, everybody has that. So that's a really important mindset to keep in mind. The second thing, though, especially coming from working in these sort of high threat, risky environments, is really something about resilience. And it's something that we don't take into account enough, I think, when we are making our plans, because my expertise happens to be in strategic planning. So there's a lot of big picture, visioning, mission, vision, purpose, and then creating action plans and executing and all of that. And I think one of the things that we don't take into account enough as we're making these plans is the resilience piece. So anticipating what are the things that could knock us off our path. And I say it from all the way from working with individuals who are creating their life plans and identifying their own purpose and how they're going to move towards it, all the way up to working with major corporations, with governments, government ministries, and all of that. And as they make their plans, also taking into account life happens. Things happen that are going to knock your plans off track. And that building in those resilience pieces from the beginning. How is it that when life happens, am I going to get back to that growth path that I've anticipated for myself? What is it going to take for me to bounce back? And so I think that is really key. Building in those mechanisms that are going to help you come back up. It's instead of floundering and eventually abandoning what you saw as your objectives in the first place.
I love the way you speak, by the way. It's very fluid.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that point about purpose, I agree with you. I believe as well that every human being has a purpose.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the amount of frustrations and stress and issues that people face in their life is because they haven't discovered their purpose as of yet. They might have received a lot of pointers, a lot of indicators, and they usually come in the form of challenges to awaken into the realization that, wait a minute, there's something in this. And that comes to your second point about resilience, is to create that mindset to be okay with challenges, to know that there's a hidden message in it. And you go with life because, like you said, life does happen, but how you respond to it opens up another avenue altogether, because once you start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in that situation or through challenges, you start realizing and noticing that those challenges become a highway to productivity or to goodness that you may be looking for or searching for.
I think there's a couple of things there that are really interesting. One of them is that as you go along your path in life, everyone has something to tell you, right? Everybody has advice for you, your parents, your family, your friends, your colleagues, TV, Instagram, everybody's telling you how to get there. And it's really hard because what's ended up happening is that the idea of happiness, success, even purpose is encapsulated into people try to create sort of metrics for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I actually just saw it today. An article came out in the USA Today about the American dream and how much harder it is now to achieve the American dream. And they talk about how expensive the American dream is. It's super expensive in Hawaii. It's less expensive in Mississippi. And then they actually say, how did we define the American dream? And they said the American dream is being married, having 2 kids, a house, a car, and a dog. That's what they define as the American dream, right? And so it's a very narrowly defined version of success, right? What if
like
your
computers?
Exactly. What is it? What if your purpose in life? What if your meaning in your soul has nothing to do with those things? So it creates a lot of stress for people who are seeking their purpose and trying to align with them. And it takes a lot of work. I'm actually calling you from the Dominican Republic today, where I spend most of my time.
Nice.
But my family are Latin American immigrants, right? And they're in the United States, and they do not understand why, after they left Latin America, why would I come back to Latin America when they made so much sacrifice and wanted me to have some version of that American dream? I've chosen to not own a house in the United States. I've chosen not to live in the United States. And it's been something that it's a lot of personal fortitude that you have to be able to make those choices when everyone's recommending to you something different. The other piece that you mentioned, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, the other piece that you mentioned was also the importance of resilience, and that personal resilience and that organizational resilience. And they're similar, but there's a couple of pieces there. When we talk about resilience as an individual, there's always something that you have struggled to overcome in your life, whether it's people pleasing, whether it's pressure from your family, whether it's imposter syndrome or anything like that. And that what you need to know is that those things that you have fought against your whole life are going to keep coming up. Right? They're your demons that accompany you. And so one of the big pieces of resilience is acknowledging these are the things that I battle with. And so creating resilience practices almost on a daily basis to help keep up your mindset and your fortitude when those things start to creep up on you is really important. And from an organizational perspective as well. From an organizational perspective, you see so many case studies where, for example, this company came out with an amazing product. It was great for a while, but they, for example, failed to continue to innovate. They failed to fully secure the buy-in from their own company about it. They failed to continue to connect with their market, whatever it is that is their demons that they've failed with, that they've struggled with. Those are the things that need to be built into their resilience plan as well. Things that they need to keep up to stay on, because they know that those are the things that are going to come back to haunt them.
And your earlier point about the purpose, it can't be defined by someone else. It must be discovered. And discovering that requires some calmness of mind. It requires some stepping back from the normal patterns of thinking, and to dig deep and go within to find that purpose. Because once you do find it, it becomes effortless. Life becomes effortless. And that point about what you were saying about the article, that's another example of the programming. It's limiting people like crazy. It just starts, and every area you look at is just, we're being bombarded by this concept that we must be part of. And that's just a very simple American dream concept. But there's other ones as well. Okay, to do better, invest in real estate, get a side income, for example, but still have the house or the mortgage, but it's still defining what you should do. And the human potential is incredible. It's way beyond that anybody can actually figure out. There's no one that can actually figure out our potential. And to limit that, we're just doing a disservice to everyone.
It's fascinating. When we talk to people, we ask them a series of questions. We have a methodology that we've developed, and how to help people think about their purpose and how to get to it. And one of the questions basically identifies how it is your unique how it is that you identify problems and how it is that you solve problems. And it's amazing because at this point we've worked with thousands of people. And the fascinating thing is that every single person has a different approach. Every single person has a uniqueness in their how-to and how they solve problems, which means that every single person brings a unique value to any situation, right? And so when I'm 100% agreeing with you. It's a tragedy when we see society, all the pressures around us trying to box our purpose, box our life into something small, when the truth is that there is a real limitless potential that's out there when we look at ourselves as individuals. And the beauty of it, once you talked about your purpose, and one of the beauties of really getting in touch with your own purpose is that you start to see everybody else's strengths too, and you start to see how it is that they complement you and you complement each other, and how you start to build this idea of social collective power, right? Where instead of being in this hustle environment, overly competitive environment, where there's so much toxicity between teams and colleagues and all of that, where you start to see that, in fact, we're so much more if we could put our heads together, when we work together, when we solve our problems together, where we each bring our unique how-to and come up with the innovation that hasn't happened before, because we've been too busy working in parallel, working against each other instead of coming together.
So that's basically the ego force-based outcomes. You're actually trying to force an outcome, and it's cutthroat. You got to just get it done.
Yeah.
But that adds a lot of baggage, and it becomes very difficult for growth to occur.
That's right. That's right. And it's a much broader topic, but one of the other things we talk about a lot is, for example, the mental health impacts of that kind of environment that's created. I work a lot with like the Black and brown Latino immigrant community in the United States. And one of the stats there is that 4 million Latinos in the United States, which is a lot of people, undergo a severe depressive episode every year. And when they're asked about it, it basically is, the answers fall along the lines of what we're talking about, that they feel like they're struggling too much and not achieving enough in terms of the American dream, that they're not reaching those metrics, and they feel that pressure, that stress And just for the sake of completeness in the stat, that it not only is it severe depression, and severe depression means I'm having trouble functioning in my day. Or it's not less like I'm having an off day, or it's people are noticing that you're not okay. And when they're asked about it, they are much more likely than other folks to be at the point of even suicidal ideation. So it's so bad that they're not even sure that they have it in them to continue living. It's a really when it's
Big
interesting.
problem.
It's beyond a problem. It's a crisis. It's an epidemic. When we talk about purpose and all of that, I know that we get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of pushback from my own cultural community about, and I said it earlier, that this purpose is for white people. Purpose is for it's a first world kind of a thing. And the truth is that finding the inability to find that purpose and live that purpose is costing my people their lives, and it turns out it's a global problem. So I think
it's a global problem.
It's a global problem. I see so much. I work in these high threat environments. I spend a lot of time working in Haiti, where if you've followed the news lately, it's basically a country that's been overrun by gangs. They assassinated, the president was assassinated a few years ago, and since then it's been absolute chaos. There's about 400,000 people that have had to flee their homes. They are internally displaced within their own country. There's been thousands of people murdered and kidnapped and all of these things. And when they talk to the gang leaders, will tell you with a straight face, and they know it. They say, if there were jobs, if there was opportunity, if there was any other way for the young men in Haiti to find a purpose, I couldn't recruit them into my gang. So that whole discussion around purpose, when you look at it in that lens, it goes from being something that seems abstract and wouldn't it be nice to, this is something that is changing
required.
It's absolutely necessary. It's costing people their lives, the inability to not get there.
So being on the topic of purpose, do you have any kind of suggestions or tips or recommendations that you can share the audience how they can spend some time with themselves, obviously, to articulate or unmask their purpose?
Yes, I would say a couple of things. One of them is that you got to sit down and ask yourself some hard questions. And I'm old school and I write them down, like pen and paper. Like it's so much more interactive, kinetic, tangible. But some of these questions are tough and they're not always pretty to think about, but it's things about like along the lines of like your legacy. When you die, when you leave this earth, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to say about you? And if you get to the point where, if you think about it, if you died right now, are people going to say, oh, he was a good person, he was a good colleague, he did nice things? And if what you think people would say about you today is something that gives you discomfort, like if it hits you in the gut and you're like, man, I'm so much more than that. If you're the person who when you hear those things, you think, man, I want people to say he affected my life. He touched me in a moment when I needed it. He was there for me. He was the person who uplifted me, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. If what you're concerned about, if what you want to feel is the impact that you make on this world, and you don't think that's what's going to be said about you right now, that's an indicator that you need to think about where you might want to start steering your life. And then there's a whole series of other questions that you can think about. Some of it is, for example, a big picture thinking question of, if you had $10 billion, what one global problem would you solve? And then how would you solve it? Okay. And it's a really fascinating question because in fact, nobody, I have yet to hear the same answer from anyone in the world on this question. And it's a really important question because the problem that you want to solve is almost not relevant. It's really to spark your thinking about what's the thing that I care about, that I'm passionate about, but it's how would I solve this problem? And it's really fascinating. So we get a lot of people who would say, for example, the biggest problem in the world is access to clean drinking water. I've had tons of people say that the biggest problem in the world, access to clean drinking water. And then you ask them, okay, great. How are you going to solve that problem? Some of them will say, I'm going to bring together the world's experts on water and sanitation and make a conference and have a whole discussion. Other people say, I'm going to go into the communities and I'm going to talk to them about how it is that they change their household practices and all these things. So everybody, when we talk about each person having a unique how-to, it's the same problem, but some people are going to approach it from the micro level. Some people are going to approach it from the macro level. Some are going to approach it from the science. Anyway, so there's a whole series of questions like that you need to ask yourself, which we have a workbook. We can talk about it in a little bit, but we have a workbook that guides you through those questions. The second thing, though,
can you share a couple more questions?
Sure,
of
course.
Help people? Yeah, please.
So the other things are along the lines of, talked about what you've overcome, and that's really important, right? What are the things that you've overcome and how you've overcome them? People often mistake what you love or your passion as your purpose, but it's an element of it, right? Your purpose is so much more than the things that you love, but it's important to detail those things out and to be as open and as creative as you can when you're listing out those things that you love. And to be honest, also in the things that you've overcome. We've had clients come to us and people have had, frankly, really horrible things happen to them sometimes in their lives. And processing those and talking about them can be tough, but it's important because it's the demon that you battle with, right? You need to at least know what it is, what you love, what your passions are, your childhood heroes. Who was your childhood hero, or who do you admire now? And that's a really interesting thing to think about in the sense of, again, it doesn't matter so much who they are, but then elaborating on their characteristics. When I went through the whole exercise for myself, strangely, that was the hardest question for me to answer. Who was my childhood hero? And I'm like, I said for months. It took me about 6 months. I don't remember. I don't think I had one, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought about finally the person I was working with asked me, what was your favorite show when you were a kid? What did you love to watch? And I remembered, and it came to me, boom, it hit me in the head. I used to watch, I don't know how old your audience is, but I used to watch Jacques Cousteau. And he's basically the inventor of scuba. And he had this show from the late 70s to the early 80s where he would go out and he was this super cool. I thought he was the coolest guy. And he would go diving and there were problems that they would solve. And I loved basically how confident he was, how calm he was, how there was always a problem and he always just worked the solution. He worked with a team. You could tell he was somebody who loved what he did. And he's just somebody that I admired, somebody that I always wanted to be like. And you don't realize, because as you go through your life, I was like, as I started thinking about it, I was like, why did I learn French? Must be because I love Jacques Cousteau. Why did I learn to scuba? Must be because I love Jacques Cousteau. Why did I want to travel all over the world? It must be because I saw it from this guy. So it's interesting to see how your childhood influences and your heroes play out through the rest of your life. So and it's like that. It's a whole series of questions that you elaborate. And what you start to see is connections across them that help you. And so what I work towards is basically working towards a statement that encapsulates you and your purpose. And so like when you read my bio, a big piece of my bio, it comes from me having done that exercise and what I see as my purpose. So when it says in my bio that I'm a catalyst for change and catalyst for positivity, that comes from me having done this purpose exercise for myself. And it's nice because then,
wonderful.
As we talk to a lot of people who, as they're going through job interviews and things like that, it helps to talk about yourself that way, right? Because now you have a different understanding of who you are and the value that you bring.
No, I love it. Man, Paul, Dr. Rivera, I'm not sure I usually ask when I get a doctor on the show, I always like to ask, can I call you Paul? Because
I left my academic position some time ago, and there was definitely a time, it's funny, there was definitely a time where I am 100% sure that I would have asked you to call me Dr. Rivera.
Yes.
But that is no longer the case for me. I've spent a lot of time understanding that I'm so much more than my title. And even though it is something that it's me and something that I earned, I think I'm more than that.
Yeah, I worked with doctors and in the past, and that's how I know is very important. I have been corrected before. Call me doctor.
You gotta ask. Right? You gotta ask. I know.
You gotta ask. Yeah. No, it's awesome, Paul. It was great to have you on the show today to find out all the wonderful things you're doing for people and your purpose and your call. I feel like for me, when I'm in present moment awareness, when I'm in presence, I get a lot of that information come to me, what I need to do. And I feel like it comes from that calmness when we calm the chitter chatter that happens a lot in the
that
head.
moment is hard to find. People don't take that time And
No.
man, I talk to a lot of people who are at that stuck point. And one of the big ways that people unstick themselves is unplugging for a little bit, I do breath
Mm.
work. Breath work is my favorite
It
thing.
changed my work. It
It,
changed my life.
it's amazing because you plug into that intuition, that little voice that's inside of you, that's always there, and you work so hard to keep it down. But once you let it
You got
out,
it.
the clarity comes, your next step comes, and the confidence to go after it. Absolutely.
Oh man, you just feel like you all of a sudden got wings.
Yeah, exactly.
And it changes everything. And it takes time. Over time, when you're consistent at it, the wings become bigger and bigger. But it is definitely something to do with calmness, our purpose. And I see that you're a very calm individual, and I'm wishing you all the best for what you do out there and make an impact all over the world, not just for one specific community. You can make an impact in various countries and cultures. I feel like at least a good 96-97% of the world's population is struggling within and needs help.
I agree with that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here and talking to folks like you, just trying to get that message out and have people see that the importance of it, have people see that you have a superpower inside you that deserves to come out.
Yes. Love it. Keep in touch. And again, wishing you all the best.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Filling in. Here.